that even in the face of hardship, persecution, marginalization, and suffering, we continue to commit ourselves to dialogue, to loving, and to serving humanity and God. His Excellency, President of the Republic of Indonesia, Your Royal Highnesses, revered religious leaders, and leaders of thoughts in our communities and countries all over the world, permit me to stand on the existing protocol. We give thanks to God for such an opportunity to gather as religious leaders to consider the important place of religion in improving our human existence. I am speaking from Nigeria, and I bring you greetings from brothers and sisters and the good citizens of Nigeria. I'm also speaking from the Anglican Church, in which the Church of Nigeria Anglican Communion is one of the largest Anglican Communion provinces in the world, as we serve more than 25 million regular worshippers and members. I'm also speaking from the Global South, which is the epicenter of the growth of Christianity in our world today. And as we are here, in spite of all the challenges that are confronting us, many are turning to Christ Jesus. And yet, we are in the part of the world where we face much persecution, oppression, and afflictions. And in fact, Nigeria will be a test case for whatever we may decide in this conference. But let me start by bringing out two important foundational points. For us in Nigeria and in Africa, we take spiritual reality, especially in our materialistic world, very seriously. Africans are said to be very spiritually oriented and religious, and so we are. And across the religions in our continent, we share deep awareness that we live our lives in a world that we did not create, and with spiritual realities. We must take this into account. Secondly, it is our hope that as the leaders of nations, that we have this moment and the privilege of political, economic, and other social influential powers to be able to change the narrative of humanity for good. And we want to thank God for this opportunity given to us. Another thing we want to stress is that service is at the core of life and leadership. Jesus Christ said that he came not to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. This also was emphasized by the Archbishop of Canterbury during his message at the funeral of the late Queen Elizabeth of England. People of love, of loving service are rare in any walk of life, but leaders of loving service are still rarer. But in all cases, those who serve will be loved and remembered when those who cling to power and privileges are long forgotten. And loving and selfless service is at the core of who we are as Christians, which is also common in our religious traditions. And as we may see, even as Christians in Nigeria, we are constrained by the love of God to serve and to help those that are in need. That even in the face of hardship, persecution, marginalization, and suffering, we continue to commit ourselves to dialogue, to loving, and to serving humanity and God. Service to God and humanity may be impeded by religious extremism, by any one religious community against others. And the challenge we have in Nigeria, mostly as religious communities, is the problem of religious extremism. You are not unaware of the challenges we face in our communities from religious extremism, both now and as a result of such extremism in the past. We are speaking from the context of affliction faced by our Christian communities in Nigeria from terrorism and attacks. These attacks happen both in the northern, central, and other parts of Nigeria. And such attacks have ended up in terrorizing our communities, displacing local populations of Christians and communities so that they flee and leave their land and property. Christians in Nigeria, since the beginning of our nation, have persistently faced persecution, especially in northern part of Nigeria, and have learned to live with it. What has been of great concern in the past decade or more is the increasing attack, an all-out attack and violence against Christians and their communities since the year 2000, especially as we see in the attacks of Boko Haram, the radical Islamic sect in the Northeast, and also the Al-Qaeda sect and ISIL affiliates since the year 2009, and subsequently the recent Islamic Hasm militia. Nigeria is now one of the most dangerous countries to be a Christian. Thousands of people have been killed by these well-organized, well-equipped, and well-funded extremists. And over 150 towns and villages have been sacked. There are over 2 million internally displaced people, and thousands more have been kidnapped for sex and ransom. Churches and poor families are now forced to pay millions of naira for ransom for their kidnapped relatives. And over a dozen citizens and pastors have been martyred. It's more than a dozen, in their hundreds. They have been martyred by these extremists. This is a cause, in addition to the hundreds of churches that have been attacked, bombed, and destroyed. We live daily in great fear. But the most important issue is the way this has been interpreted. The real issue in this violence is not clash of tribes or issue of climate change as it is officially presented. This is genocide. It must be called by its name. What is most problematic in the current situation is that very few world leaders are willing to listen to the victims. Even when the United Kingdom All-Party Parliamentary Group on Religious Freedom reported that Nigerian Christians are facing genocide in increasing way, the Western nations and other governments insist that this is just a matter of tribal clashes between the pastoralists and the farmers, both fighting for scarce economic resources caused by climate change. Politically, this may sound politically correct, but this is a disinformation which aims to be a strategic way of pushing the real issues aside. And this may have been promoted by some of our Nigerian politicians and other groups who benefit from these undeclared massacres through various corrupt monetary and security and sales of arms and ammunition with which these heinous crimes are being committed. There is need for a change in our understanding of what we are suffering. Islamic groups have also carried out targeted killings in areas that have nothing to do with climate change factors. And people have suffered and families have been decimated. What do Christians in Nigeria want? Christians in Nigeria simply want the killings to stop and for the victims of this violence to get justice. We have been working on rebuilding communities, developing educational institutions destroyed by these extremists, and providing food and medical assistance to the victims. We need you to join hands with us to rebuild our nation. We need you to help us to tell our stories. We have testimonies, facts, and truths about these events and happenings. We want to rebuild our communities and a global religious family. And as a religious global family, we need your prayers and also your support in helping us deal with these problems. As a result of religious extremism and an ever-increasing number of orphans, widows, homeless people who have been driven out of their homes and farms and means of livelihood, we create more social and economic problems. Therefore, we ask, at such a time as this, that you come to our aid. The impact of these terrorist attacks. Number one, words and concepts are powerful. We have continuously seen that even children from childhood are taught and given words that are derogatory, name-calling to those who do not belong to their communities, including attacks even on moderate Islamic groups. Even in our dialogues in seeking for good relationship, peaceful coexistence, we use words and concepts which do not hold the same meaning for all of us. Therefore, there is need for us to have words that are acceptable, concepts that can convey our meanings, and actually what we want to discuss with each other. Secondly, the impact of what we are seeing is that we have much insecurity in our communities. Traveling in Nigeria is very dangerous with the ever-increasing risk of kidnapping and violent attacks. Thirdly, we have economic impact. Nigeria is a country with great natural resources that will be able to benefit not only our population, but other countries. But it is held back from developing and sharing these wonderful gifts of God for the good of all by insecurity, uncertainty, fear, and distrust, which is generated by religious conflict. What can this conference do for us or help us to achieve? Number one of the key aims of our gathering is to address and, where possible, stop such outrages. We in Nigeria need the help of people of goodwill from all religious communities to stop the flow of arms and blood, stop the funding and other resources that empower the extremists. Secondly, here in Indonesia, you are committed to and practice religious pluralism and tolerance. Such an approach would be very beneficial to the global community, especially where religious extremism abounds. Living with and managing our religious and cultural diversities as a source of strength rather than a way that threatens our lives together in the society must be exploited and be made good use of. Therefore, we are looking forward to the outcome of this conference, hoping that it will help us in living together and managing our religious and cultural diversities in Nigeria in such a way that this will be a blessing to our society rather than a cause. Thank you, and God bless you.